Welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, get ready, because this story is wild. We're talking corporate espionage, a love triangle, and you're not going to believe this.
Socks.
Yeah, this one is a doozy. It's amazing what people will do when there's money and power involved.
Yeah.
This deep dive is really going to make you think twice about who you can trust, especially at work.
So imagine this. You're Jim, just a regular guy working hard on this huge project at work. Everything seems fine, until you start hearing these whispers, rumors about your wife, Amanda, and your boss, George.
That's never a good sign, those office rumors.
Right. And get this, the source material we're working with is a transcript from one of those channels where they act out stories that people send in. And let me tell you, this one feels straight out of a soap opera.
Oh, I love those. Give me the drama. What happened?
Okay, so right off the bat, there's this weird tension. Jim's coworkers have actually seen Amanda at the office with George in his office.
Oh, so not even trying to hide it. Bold move.
Right. But when Jim asks Amanda about it, she just brushes it off. I mean, come on, wouldn't you be a little suspicious?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
But Jim, he seems to want to trust Amanda. I mean, she is his wife. Though the transcript does make it clear that something feels off to him. In fact, he even talks to a friend about it, but ends up just brushing it off.
Wow, so he's getting warnings left and right from coworkers and friends.
Yeah, it's almost like he doesn't want to know the truth. Sometimes he can kind of sense something's wrong, but you just ignore it.
Oh, totally. Ignorance is bliss, right? Well, not always.
Definitely not in this case. Because things get even worse during this huge business pitch. We're talking a $100 million deal here. Jim pours his heart and soul into this thing, but then, when it's time for someone to get recognition, George does what George does.
I think I know what's coming. He takes all the credit.
Bingo! Classic credit-stealing boss move. I'm sure a lot of people listening have probably experienced this kind of thing at some point.
Oh, for sure. It's a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
But stealing credit on a $100 million deal? That's a new level.
Right, and it gets worse. Remember those performance reviews that everyone dreads? Well, George gives Jim a B+8, B+8.
Oh, come on. That's just insulting. What was the reason?
Get this. George literally praises his own predator instincts for guiding the project to success. Talk about audacious.
Wow. That's next level. It's almost comical if it weren't so awful,
Exactly. It really makes you wonder about the company culture that allows this kind of behavior.
For real. What were they thinking?
Right. So anyway, Jim, poor Jim, decides to confide in Gloria, that coworker who saw Amanda in George's office. Maybe hoping for, a bit of support, Just someone to acknowledge that something shady is going on.
Yeah, a little validation. So what does Gloria say?
Well, instead of being a good coworker and backing him up, she basically tells him to keep his mouth shut and just do his job.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So much for female solidarity. Her reaction is kind of a perfect example of how a culture of silence can take root in a workplace.
Totally. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, what was she promised?
Right. Because, George is buttering up everyone around him to get what he wants.
Okay, so remember how I said things get worse? Well, brace yourself, because it gets so much worse for Jim. He goes home, and he finds something that confirms all of his worst fears.
Oh, no. Don't tell me. Another woman's something, an earring, lipstick.
Close. George's socks. At his house, his socks.
Turns out those socks are the tip of the iceberg.
So it is another woman.
Well, yes and no.
Okay, now you have to explain.
Remember how Jim's been killing it on this project? Well, all of it was a setup. George was using the rumors about an affair to distract Jim while he stole his work.
Hold on, are you serious? The whole love triangle thing was fake. Just a way to sabotage Jim?
Exactly. George was playing the long conner. While Jim was worried about Amanda and George was setting Jim up to take the fall. Also, he could swoop in and look like the office hero with that $100 million deal.
Wow, that is ruthless.
That's corporate espionage for you.
This is blowing my mind. And Gloria, that coworker, she was in on it too.
Oh yeah, Gloria was definitely in on the plan.
Yeah.
Which, makes you wonder about those company-wide emails we get about ethics and integrity.
Seriously, what happened to if you see something, say something?
Right. It's easy to say you believe in those values, but when you're looking at a possible promotion or maybe even just trying to keep your job, well.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to just look the other way.
It happens all the time, unfortunately. This situation with Jim just shows how power dynamics can turn even the best of us into, well, not so great people. It's all about ambition.
Right.
Speaking of not so great people, back to Jim. So he's lost his project, his wife's leaving him, and his supposed friend at work totally threw him under the bus. What happens to Jim?
This is where things get interesting, because remember how I said the transcript reads like a soap opera? Well, get ready for the dramatic climax. Jim finds out about the affair and the stolen work all at once.
Oh man, how does that happen?
Let's just say that Jim confronts both George and Amanda at the same time.
Ooh, at the office. Awkward. Talk about a dramatic exit interview.
You better believe it was dramatic. The transcript says that Amanda was ice cold when she told Jim she was leaving him for George. You know, no apologies, no regrets, nothing.
Cold. But did she know about George's plan to steal Jim's project? Was she using Jim too, or was she a pawn in all of this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the transcript leaves it open to interpretation.
Ugh, talk about adding insult to injury. I cannot believe she served him with divorce papers at the office.
It's a pretty brutal way to end a marriage, not to mention a career.
It really makes you wonder about Amanda. Is this a pattern of behavior for her? Because, I mean, the way she just casually tosses out that line about it not being her first time in George's office for that kind of meeting.
Yeah, that line is definitely open to interpretation. And it kind of makes you think about the company's HR department, or lack thereof.
Right. You'd think someone would have noticed what was going on.
You'd think. But then again, we've all worked in places where certain people just seem to get away with everything.
So, Jim is officially the office casualty. I mean, his career's over, right?
That's a good question. And it's something that we'll explore more after the break.
So what happens to Jim? Does he manage to pick up the pieces and move on, or is he totally destroyed by all of this?
Well, the transcript doesn't really tell us what happens to Jim in the end, which I actually think makes this whole thing even more unsettling.
Yeah, it's kind of like the story just ends with Jim being completely wrecked.
Exactly. And it really makes you think about the lasting impact of corporate sabotage like this. I mean, can someone like Jim ever really recover from such a betrayal? Not just professionally, but personally, too.
It's like on one hand, you kind of want to shake Jim and be like, hello, wake up. How do you not see any of this coming?
I know, right? But then again, I think it's easy to judge when you're on the outside looking in.
That's true. We're only getting Jim's side of the story. Plus, we all have blind spots, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes we can be so focused on our work or our personal lives that we miss some pretty obvious warning signs.
So besides being super careful about leaving your socks unattended, what are some takeaways from this whole crazy situation with Jim? You know, for our listeners out there, so they don't end up as the office casualty.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to always trust your gut. If something feels off at work, it probably is.
Yeah, that's good advice. But it can be hard to tell the difference between your gut telling you something's wrong and just like regular work paranoia, you know?
True. But that's why it's so important to pay attention to people's actions and not just their words. Anyone can say they're a good person or a team player, but do their actions back that up?
So true. Actions speak louder than words, or whatever that saying is.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem a little uncomfortable.
And document everything. Seriously, if you're working on something important, keep records.
Yes. A paper trail is your best friend. That way, if someone tries to take credit for your work or push you out, you have proof.
I'm also thinking about what you said earlier about those company-wide ethics emails. Clearly, those aren't always effective.
Yeah, sometimes those feel more like a formality than anything else,
Yeah.
like they're just covering their bases.
So how can you protect yourself in a work environment where people are constantly trying to get ahead, even if it means stepping on others to get there?
Well, for one, make sure you're not just sharing your ideas with your direct supervisor.
Yeah.
Loop in other stakeholders too, like higher-ups or people in different departments.
Ooh, smart. So that way, it's not just one person who knows about your amazing work.
Right. Spread the credit around a bit. It's not about being arrogant or a show-off. It's about making sure your contributions are recognized.
And if you see something shady going on, don't be afraid to speak up, even if it means going over your boss's head or reaching out to HR.
Right. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Wow, what a wild story. So many twists and turns.
It's like a master class in corporate manipulation with a side of relationship drama.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that you really can't be too careful these days, especially in the workplace.
Totally agree. Trust your instincts, document everything, and maybe invest in a good lock for your sock drawer.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we'll be back next week with another juicy story from the depths of the internet.
Until then, stay vigilant out there.
And remember, sometimes the most dramatic stories come from the most unexpected places.